Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Grace Holland. It's been 1 year since a professor was killed on UNC-Chapel Hill's campus. As the university begins a new school year, we're reflecting on what has changed since that day. WRAL Durham reporter Monica Casey joins me by phone from the university's campus. Monica, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So take us back to a year ago. How did this all unfold on August 28th, 2023, and tell us about the victim?
Yeah, that was a really chaotic day on UNC's campus. Just after 1 o'clock that day,
we interrupt this program for breaking news.
Good afternoon, Ken Smith here in the WRAL Live Center. We're following some breaking news on the campus of UNC-Chapel Hill.
The emergency notification from Alert Carolina went out, and then the sirens that are all over campus started blaring.
I don't know what's going on.
Armed, dangerous person, go inside.
So obviously a lot of students who were on campus were trying to shelter in buildings on campus, but this panic actually extended all the way over to Franklin Street. There were students hiding in coffee shops and things like that, barricading the doors. It was a lot of the area of Chapel Hill had concern.
I'm just checking my phone, and then, there's an active shooter in the building right next to me.
Every group chat and everything of every club and group I'm part of on campus just started getting flooded. That's when I knew something was wrong.
Police arrested the graduate student accused in this murder, Tylee Chi, just before 3
into custody.
p.m.
But all of this happening right now on air in real time. We're currently the only media news crew that is capturing this right now. We'll send it back to you.
There you see a live picture, sorry, Deb, of this person being put into the back of a police car that looks like obviously a law enforcement vehicle. They're on Williams Circle, just a little over a mile away from campus, and now they're leading the person around the vehicle in handcuffs. That's the person we saw sitting down on the street with his hands behind his back, getting into the back of that police car.
And then the lockdown was lifted around 4:30. So this lockdown lasted about 3.5 hours, and it was a long time. We were interviewing students in some of the buildings. We were listening through 911 traffic to try to figure out where we could be, where it would be safe. It was a really stressful situation for people here on campus. The victim in this case was Professor Zijie Yan. He is a father of 2. He was an associate professor in UNC's Department of Applied Physical Sciences, and he was studying nanoscience technology.
And how did the university mark the anniversary on Wednesday?
It was a really powerful moment. Around 1:15 in the afternoon, the bell tower played Hark the Sound. And a message also went out from UNC's new chancellor, who was not here at the time, reminding students and staff of mental health resources that they could take advantage of, because this day brought up a lot of difficult feelings for people here on campus.
And when you went out to the bell tower, what was the mood out there? Who did you talk to?
It was pretty somber by the bell tower. It was actually during a class change when this was happening, so we saw some students walking around, kind of looking up at the bell tower, but there were a dozen people, give or take, some faculty and some students who were standing in the shade near the bell tower, just standing silently, and you could really feel the emotion. I spoke with 2 students who actually didn't know the professor, but they came out because they wanted to feel closer to each other and to him.
Still triggered, to say the least. I just teared up just now. I was trying to pull it together, but it's still hard to think about.
They thought it was a really powerful experience, and those 2 students tell me they carry some trauma from what happened a year ago, and this was another step on their healing process. I also spoke with Yen's colleague, Nicola Pegar. He tells me that they bonded over being fathers.
He was a very shy person, so not the kind of person that openly, shares everything and whatnot. And but I got to meet him a lot through his daughter, because his daughter was the relay, basically.
He first kind of was bonding with Yen's daughter, and then started to bond with Yen himself as they talked about how do you balance life here at work and life outside the lab as well.
He's a foreigner moving to the U.S., I'm a foreigner moving to the U.S., and then we navigate, the educational system, and we're kind of discussing things what constitutes a good school, or what is this thing called the after school program, and how do you manage all that? So we would talk that kind of, personal stuff.
One thing Pega really wanted to emphasize when I spoke with him about Yan was that he was a really good mentor to the students underneath him.
His door was always open. He was always like welcoming students. So he was a careful and cautious mentor. Like he cared for the well-being of his students academically, personally. Like, someone who spent 30 minutes every week with every single student in their lab cares about their student. He was not an absentee mentor. He was not the kind of mentor that makes their students like overwork. Like just like my students, one of the things we tell the best performing students, you need to take a weekend and stop working so you can actually be better at your job on Monday and not be a zombie because you haven't slept. I know you're passionate, but you need to have a life. And that's the kind of mentor that he was.
Did he say anything about what it's been like for him in the last year? I mean, having to come back to the labs, knowing what happened there.
He said it's been really difficult, and he was really open about that because one of the things that he said this experience taught him was to try to fight the stigma around mental health and be open about his own struggles.
I come from a culture where you don't really even acknowledge that you would see a therapist, for instance. And when it happened, I definitely needed help myself. I got some and I got better pretty well. And then I figured I would be open about it because to me it's like I don't want anybody to not seek help when they clearly need it.
He felt that it was important for him to go back to his own office and regain some sense of normalcy there and show students that it is safe for them there as well.
All right, let's take a quick break right there and we'll be right back. Monica, what is the status of the suspect in this case?
So Zijie Yan is the graduate student who's been charged in this murder, and he was actually found unfit for trial last November. He was sent to a mental health facility last year. He does have an administrative hearing scheduled for this December, so we might see more developing in that case depending on how he's doing. He was 34 at the time of this shooting, and he had been at UNC since 2022. Most recently, the judge said that Zijie Yan, demonstrated delusional thinking, had some hallucinations. He was self-harming in the detention center, and essentially that his behavior was consistent with severe mental illness. So a really sad situation there. The professor who was a colleague of Yan, Pega, tells me that they actually knew Zijie Yan had some problems and they tried to get him to seek help, but they never expected him to turn violent. They never expected anything like what happened a year ago.
Right, and of course, mental health has really played a big role in this case when it comes to people recovering who were on campus from what they went through, and then also the issues that this suspect had. How has the university addressed some of that, and then also security, which this has brought up in big ways since then?
Yeah, so UNC engaged in what's called an after-action report after this shooting. So they gathered a lot of feedback. They actually set up a portal online for students, staff, faculty, even parents to provide some feedback on how things unfolded in August. And you'll remember one thing that really kind of compounded this situation in the weeks after, there was another lockdown just a couple of weeks later when a man pulled a gun in the Alpine Bagel store. And we were actually on campus when that happened, and you could see students running the minute they heard police sirens. The university sirens weren't even going off, and people were already seeking shelter. So it was a really tense semester last fall, and UNC has really taken a lot of the recommendations to heart. Last spring, they added license plate readers because this is an open campus, meaning pretty much anyone can drive onto this campus and be here. In the case of that second lockdown incident, that suspect had no affiliation with the campus at all. So license plate readers are one thing. The university has also now installed more cameras. They already had a lot of them, but one of the issues was that they weren't hooked up to a central system. They kind of all operated on their own, and there was no way to view them all at once in real time. So that's a big change they have done. One big complaint we heard from people was a lack of locks on classroom doors, whether that was that the lock wasn't there or it was broken or the faculty member couldn't figure out how to lock the door. There are a lot of different kinds. So UNC says they've now ensured every classroom door does have a lock, along with directions on how to lock that door. The other thing they've done, faculty and staff have new online trainings they can participate in. Those were made available, I believe it was in July, so they had a little over a month to work on those, and so that is another thing the university has done since the shooting.
And knowing all of those steps that the university has taken, what did the students you talked to say about those steps and how they're feeling about the new school year?
It's kind of a mixed bag is what I'm hearing. They think that safety and security have certainly been more top of mind and they've been discussed more in classrooms. You know, we're only about, I think, less than a week at this point into the new school year, and one student was telling me that each of her classes, they've discussed what do we do in these kinds of emergencies. So it's definitely top of mind. Some of the biggest concerns with classroom locks and the identity of people coming to campus have been addressed to some extent. Another thing that people had some concerns about were the Alert Carolina messages. Those now will come through text message, social media, email, pretty much any way the university can reach students. A big complaint during this lockdown was what students perceived as a lack of information from the university, and UNC really heard that feedback and put some changes into place. They have a new protocol for more frequent updates in an emergency with more details as much as they can give. They are also working on clearer language in those alerts, and then they are also working on adding a Spanish language option, which will make sure that everyone on campus can understand what is going on in case of an emergency.
All right, well, thank you so much, Monica, and thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email that's waiting in your inbox every morning with local news, events, and headlines to get you ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.